The Roman Empire, which had dominated the known world for centuries, was teetering on the brink of chaos. Yet none could foresee the calamity that would befall Emperor Valerian, a ruler whose ambition and sense of duty would bring him face to face with a death so cruel it would echo through history. This was not a battlefield accident or a fleeting political assassination. It was the culmination of a clash between two empires at the height of their power, a confrontation that would forever alter Rome's perception of invincibility. The 3rd century CE was a time when Rome's foundations were cracking. Multiple emperors rose and fell in rapid succession. Barbarian tribes pressed against northern borders, and economic instability plagued the provinces. Into this maelstrom ascended Publius Licinius Valerianus in 253 CE. Unlike many of his short-lived predecessors, Valerian brought political acumen, military experience, and a reputation for competence. He had served as senator, held provincial commands, and understood the intricate mechanics of governing an empire that spanned continents. Recognizing that the vast Roman territories could not be governed by a single hand, Valerian appointed his son Gallienus as co-emperor. Valerian would command the eastern frontier, where the Sassanid Persian Empire posed a mounting threat. Gallienus would oversee the western provinces, defending the Rhine against Germanic incursions. Syria, Mesopotamia, and the eastern provinces were not merely strategic. They were the wealth and lifeblood of Rome, crucial to maintaining both military and economic power. Losing them would be catastrophic. The Sassanid dynasty, which had supplanted the Parthians in 224 CE, had already demonstrated an ambition and sophistication Rome had rarely encountered. Under Ardashir and now his son Shapur IV, the Persians combined military innovation with political cunning. Shapur was a master of strategy, an astute propagandist, and a keen student of Rome itself. He understood that true conquest was not only measured in defeated armies, but in shattered symbols. The capture of a Roman emperor was the ultimate statement, a vivid proof that Rome could bleed, suffer, and fall. Valerian's campaign began in 256 CE with fanfare befitting an emperor determined to restore Rome's eastern dominance. Troops from across the empire, including veteran legions, assembled for what many believed would be a swift resolution to the Persian threat. Initially, success seemed within reach. Roman forces relieved besieged cities, restored control over disputed territories, and executed methodical siege operations that reflected Valerian's military expertise. But Shapur's strategy was unlike any Rome had faced. He avoided decisive confrontation, instead drawing Roman forces deeper into hostile territory, extending supply lines, and exploiting logistical weaknesses. Persian cavalry harassed convoys and detachments, striking with precision and disappearing into the Mesopotamian landscape. Disease spread through the Roman camp, likely exacerbated by the plague of Cyprian, decimating soldiers and undermining morale. By 260 CE, Roman fortunes had reversed completely. Supplies dwindled, troops weakened by illness and exhaustion, and morale shattered. It was in this desperate hour that Valerian made the fateful decision to negotiate with Shapur directly. Ancient accounts differ. Some claim he sought honorable withdrawal, others assert he surrendered unconditionally. Regardless, he walked into a trap carefully set by the Persian king, whose understanding of psychology and propaganda surpassed that of any contemporary ruler. The capture itself was swift. Valerian's bodyguards were overwhelmed, and the emperor, despite his rank, became a prisoner. The collapse of command led to a rout of Roman forces, transforming a disciplined campaign into chaos. Yet Shapur did not execute Valerian immediately. The emperor was preserved as a living symbol of Roman vulnerability, subjected to humiliation designed to destroy not just his dignity, but the image of Rome itself. Accounts describe Valerian's subjugation, forced to serve as a human footstool, compelled to participate in foreign rituals, stripped of imperial regalia, and made to endure indignities for years. This psychological warfare was a calculated act, ensuring that every observer, Persian noble, foreign envoy, and defeated soldier, understood the power of Shapur and the fragility of Rome. By the time Valerian's final fate was enacted, the groundwork of humiliation and propaganda had been laid over years of captivity. His death would be not just a personal tragedy, but a carefully orchestrated statement of Persian supremacy. The method chosen would ensure maximum suffering, symbolism, and historical resonance. Valerian's story is a study in ambition, miscalculation, and the perilous intersection of personal pride and statecraft. It shows how, in the arena of imperial power, a single decision, driven by desperation or hope, can ripple outward to reshape the course of nations. In meeting Shapur, Valerian set in motion a chain of events whose consequences would haunt Rome for generations, leaving a scar on the collective psyche of the empire. The stage was set for one of history's most horrifying finales, where the mightiest man in Rome would become a living testament to the devastating reach of human cruelty and political calculation. The shock of Valerian's capture reverberated through the Roman army like a thunderclap. Soldiers who had followed him into Mesopotamia now confronted the unbearable truth. The emperor himself, the embodiment of Rome's authority and military might, had fallen into enemy hands. Discipline collapsed. Units dissolved into flight or surrender. The once proud legions of Rome, battle-hardened and disciplined, became shadows of themselves, haunted by the knowledge that their leader had been stripped of power, dignity, and freedom. Valerian, however, was far from defeated in the physical sense. Persian sources describe him being treated with care sufficient to maintain his health, a deliberate choice by Shapur designed to maximize both propaganda and psychological impact. He was removed from the battlefield and transported to the heart of Sassanid Persia, a land that would be both a prison and a stage upon which the grandeur of his humiliation would be displayed. The emperor's captors understood that his survival alone was a weapon, a living testament to Persian supremacy and Roman vulnerability. From the moment of his arrival, Valerian was subjected to a carefully orchestrated program of humiliation. Persian chroniclers recount that he was forced to wear simple garments, stripped of the purple and gold that signified imperial authority. Rituals were imposed that clashed with Roman religious sensibilities. Attendance at Zoroastrian ceremonies, gestures of submission before Persian deities, and participation in ceremonies that underscored the triumph of Shapur over the mightiest ruler of the Western world. Every act, every posture, was designed to erode the psychological foundation of Roman imperial identity. Beyond ritualized ceremonies, Valerian's treatment included symbolic reversals of power. The emperor was forced to serve as a living footstool when Shapur mounted his horse, a grotesque inversion of centuries of protocol in which subjects prostrated themselves before the emperor. Craftsmen and artists were commissioned to document these scenes. Paintings, reliefs, and statues captured the emperor's degradation for posterity, ensuring that the narrative of Persian triumph would endure across generations. The political stakes of this captivity were immense. By keeping Valerian alive, Shapur communicated to both Romans and allies of Persia that the Sassanid Empire was not only militarily capable, but politically sophisticated. Every interaction with the emperor became a calculated message. To subdue an empire, one need not destroy its armies alone. One could destroy its symbols. Roman ambassadors were allowed to witness these humiliations, ensuring that news of the emperor's condition would circulate widely, sowing fear and uncertainty throughout the empire. Valerian's daily existence became a testament to the deliberate dismantling of authority. He was fed adequately, yet from humble vessels. He was clothed, yet never in the trappings befitting his former station. His quarters were comfortable, but stripped of all markers of rank and power. Persian chroniclers emphasized that the care with which he was maintained was intentional. The emperor's life itself was a tool of statecraft, his continued survival amplifying the humiliation for those who heard or witnessed the story. The psychological impact extended beyond Valerian himself. Romans, both military and civilian, learned of the emperor's captivity and the indignities he endured. The mental blow to imperial morale was severe. Soldiers questioned the invincibility of their legions. Provincial governors doubted the empire's capacity to defend its eastern provinces. Citizens wondered whether Rome's prestige could survive this unprecedented affront. Valerian's suffering became an axis around which political instability, military caution, and strategic hesitation rotated for decades. Yet for all its cruelty, the captivity was far from random. Shapur's understanding of human psychology, symbolism, and power dynamics ensured that every act served a purpose. By breaking the emperor slowly, through years of servitude, forced participation in rituals, and public humiliation, the Persian king ensured that Valerian's suffering resonated beyond the confines of the Sassanid court. The emperor's misery became a tool of influence, a reminder to all that the mighty could fall, and that Roman authority was neither absolute nor immune to calculated brutality. This campaign of psychological warfare foreshadowed a final act designed to ensure maximum historical resonance. Shapur's intentions were clear. The years of humiliation, the meticulous recording of Valerian's subjugation, and the symbolic reversals of power were preparation for an execution that would transform personal suffering into enduring political capital. The stage was being set, not just for a death, but for a ritualized public statement of Persian supremacy that would echo across continents and centuries. The captive emperor, stripped of all his worldly authority yet alive, became a symbol of the shifting balance of power between Rome and Persia. His existence as a living trophy was a lesson in the fragility of empires and the dangers of underestimating an opponent who understood both strategy and symbolism. Valerian's story, already extraordinary in its military and political dimensions, was about to reach its darkest, most horrifying chapter. A chapter in which cruelty would be wielded not merely as punishment, but as a carefully designed instrument of statecraft. After years of captivity, Shapur determined that Valerian's life had served its purpose. The emperor's humiliation, chronicled in Persian art and witnessed by foreign envoys, had already weakened Roman morale and demonstrated Persian supremacy. Yet the king sought a final act, one that would transform Valerian's death into a permanent symbol of the consequences of defying Persia. This act would be remembered not as a battlefield defeat, but as a meticulously staged lesson in power, cruelty, and political theater. Preparation for the execution was methodical. Persian sources describe a series of rituals that preceded the act, each designed to assert control over the emperor while imbuing the death with religious and symbolic significance. Valerian was shaved, bathed, and subjected to substances that softened the skin, all in anticipation of the flaying to come. Every step was calculated, reinforcing the message that his suffering was deliberate, measured, and meaningful in the eyes of Persian culture. The flaying itself, known in Persian tradition as a form of ritualized death, was carried out by skilled executioners trained to prolong suffering while ensuring survival until the final moment. The process reportedly began with the extremities, fingers, toes, and facial features, progressing to the larger areas of the body. Valerian remained conscious throughout, his cries echoing through the palace, a grotesque symphony of Roman defeat. The act was witnessed by Persian nobles, foreign envoys, and carefully chosen audiences, guaranteeing that word of the emperor's fate would travel rapidly across the known world. This method of execution was not merely punitive, it carried profound symbolic weight. In Zoroastrian and pre-Zoroastrian Persian traditions, the removal of skin was linked to spiritual purification and the expulsion of corruption. By choosing this form of death, Shapur framed the emperor's execution as both political retribution and cosmic justice, a cleansing of Persian lands from the contamination of Roman arrogance. Every incision, every act of ritualized torment, was designed to communicate dominance not just physically, but ideologically. Following Valerian's death, Persian craftsmen transformed his remains into a lasting monument to victory. His skin was carefully treated with chemicals, stuffed with straw, and dressed in mock imperial regalia. The life-sized effigy was displayed in a prominent temple, where it would be visible to ambassadors, dignitaries, and Persian subjects. The message was clear. The Emperor of Rome, once invincible, had become a tangible emblem of Persian supremacy. For centuries, the display would serve as a reminder that Roman authority could be shattered, reduced to a symbol of humiliation, and reinterpreted as divine sanction for Persian power. The news of Valerian's death reached Rome months later, carried by refugees and Persian messengers. Disbelief quickly gave way to shock and horror. The Senate attempted to suppress the worst details, while Gallienus, Valerian's son and co-emperor, faced the impossible task of maintaining authority amidst panic and uncertainty. Imperial propaganda framed Valerian as a heroic martyr, omitting the humiliations of captivity and flaying. Yet even these efforts could not fully erase the psychological wound inflicted upon the empire. Eastern legions were demoralized, recruitment faltered, and Roman military planners approached campaigns with newfound caution, acutely aware that their emperor's fate could befall any leader who misjudged the enemy. Beyond immediate military and political consequences, Valerian's death reshaped Roman perceptions of power and vulnerability. The empire's eastern frontier was left exposed, while the Sassanids gained prestige that reverberated through diplomatic and military channels. Civil wars, challenges to Gallienus's legitimacy, and territorial losses compounded the effects, illustrating that the capture and execution of a single individual could ripple outward to destabilize an entire civilization. Persian cultural memory preserved the story of Valerian's humiliation and death for centuries. Poets, chroniclers, and religious writers wove his fate into Sassanid ideology, portraying Shapur as divinely favored and strategically brilliant. For Rome, the story endured as a cautionary tale, cited by historians and military theorists to illustrate the dangers of overconfidence, the importance of understanding one's enemies, and the limits of imperial authority. Art, literature, and later historical works perpetuated Valerian's memory, ensuring that his suffering and Shapur's calculated cruelty would resonate far beyond the immediate events of the 3rd century CE. Valerian's death exemplifies the intersection of human cruelty and political calculation. His flaying was not a random act of barbarity, but a carefully orchestrated event designed to project power, destroy morale, and manipulate history itself. By reducing the mightiest man in Rome to a lifeless, preserved symbol, Shapur achieved a victory greater than any battlefield triumph. The Roman emperor's agony became a tool of statecraft, his body a message that transcended time, influencing military conduct, imperial ideology, and cultural memory for generations. The story of Valerian endures not merely for its horror, but for its lessons. It is a testament to the fragility of power, the potency of symbolism, and the terrifying lengths to which rulers will go to assert dominance. His fate serves as a reminder that in the arena of human ambition and geopolitical struggle, survival is never guaranteed, and the consequences of misjudgment can be both profoundly personal and historically transformative. The death of Emperor Valerian sent shockwaves far beyond the deserts of Mesopotamia. News of his capture, years-long humiliation, and eventual execution reached Rome like a hammer blow to the psyche of an empire already weakened by civil strife and economic instability. Soldiers, administrators, and citizens alike were forced to confront a terrifying truth. The seemingly invincible Roman power could be broken, not merely on the battlefield, but symbolically, psychologically, and ideologically. In the immediate aftermath, Roman military operations shifted. Emperors and generals alike became cautious, delegating eastern campaigns to subordinate commanders rather than risking their personal safety. The traditional image of the emperor as battlefield leader, central to Roman identity for centuries, was forever altered. Valerian's fate became a cautionary tale, taught to soldiers and administrators alike. Hubris could be as deadly as an enemy army. Recruitment, strategy, and morale all bore the invisible scars of his suffering. Meanwhile, in Persia, Shapur I capitalized on the psychological and political power of his victory. The humiliation and eventual death of Valerian were transformed into enduring propaganda. The preserved skin, dressed in imperial robes and displayed prominently, became both a religious and political artifact, representing divine favor and strategic brilliance. Persian poets, chroniclers, and artists wove the emperor's story into the Sassanid narrative of legitimacy, reinforcing Shapur's claim as a ruler favored by Ahura Mazda. The display served multiple purposes: a warning to foreign powers, a reinforcement of internal cohesion, and a tangible demonstration of Persian supremacy. Cultural memory ensured that Valerian's story transcended both time and geography. Roman historians documented his capture and execution in graphic detail, framing it as a lesson in the dangers of overconfidence and the necessity of respecting one's enemies. Writers such as Lactantius and later chroniclers used the story to reflect on divine judgment, morality, and human frailty. Art and literature preserved the image of the fallen emperor, allowing his suffering to serve as both moral instruction and dramatic narrative for centuries. Even in Renaissance Europe, painters and sculptors would revisit the story, depicting Valerian's captivity and execution as cautionary tableau illustrating pride, vulnerability, and political peril. Religious interpretations added further layers to Valerian's legacy. Christian authors interpreted his fate as an example of divine justice, often emphasizing the moral lessons inherent in the emperor's overreach. Zoroastrian and Persian sources, conversely, framed the event as evidence of cosmic order, portraying Shapur's victory as divinely sanctioned and spiritually significant. Across traditions, the story served to reinforce cultural norms, political authority, and theological narratives. Strategically, the loss of Valerian and the decimation of the Roman Eastern army left a vacuum that shifted the balance of power. Persian influence expanded into regions formerly under Roman control, including key cities and trade routes. Neighboring powers, tribes along the northern frontier, African kingdoms to the south, and client states in the east reassessed their relations with Rome. The psychological impact of the emperor's humiliation was as significant as any territorial loss. Roman authority, once perceived as unassailable, was now demonstrably vulnerable. Valerian's death also offers a profound reflection on the nature of human cruelty, symbolism, and power. His suffering, meticulously orchestrated by Shapur, transformed personal agony into a tool of statecraft. The flaying was not an act of mindless brutality. It was a calculated, symbolic event designed to communicate dominance, instill fear, and codify the triumph of one civilization over another. By turning the body of the emperor into a monument, Shapur achieved a form of conquest that outlasted armies, territories, and generations. Even centuries later, historians and archaeologists have continued to study Valerian's fate to understand the interplay between psychological warfare, military strategy, and cultural memory. His story illustrates how an individual's suffering can become emblematic of broader historical processes influencing diplomacy, propaganda, and military doctrine long after the final act of violence has ended. The preserved skin, the chronicled humiliations, and the public ceremonies all serve as reminders that power is fragile, that symbols can be as potent as armies, and that the consequences of miscalculation can resonate far beyond the life of a single human being. Valerian's death stands as one of history's starkest demonstrations of how personal tragedy can shape the trajectory of nations. It serves as a warning. Empires, no matter how vast, can be humiliated. Leaders, regardless of their power, can be rendered helpless. And human suffering, when combined with strategic intent, can become a lasting instrument of political authority. His story endures because it touches on fundamental anxieties: mortality, vulnerability, and the limits of human control that remain relevant in every age. The echoes of Valerian's fate, through literature, art, religious interpretation, and historical study, continue to resonate. They remind us that beneath the veneer of civilization lies the same brutal realities that governed the ancient world: the collision of ambition and cruelty, the transformation of human suffering into political power, and the fragile nature of authority. In remembering Valerian, we confront not only the horrors of the past, but also the enduring lessons about the responsibilities, dangers, and consequences of wielding power in any age.